Welcome to Unlikely Disciples, the Catholic podcast for young adults, made by young adults. Today joining the pod we have Jack, Jason, Matthew, Ryan, and Louisa.
So we've been on break now for, what? I've been on break for like a week, I think. You guys have
I've been on
second.
3 days.
Yeah.
I started on Tuesday night.
Feels like we've been on
So
break for like a
specific.
month.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like what are you guys doing? Or I guess what are you guys not doing also? That's a fair question. In terms of faith related stuff. Like I know some of you are just recently on break.
Yeah. I didn't go to adoration on Thursday, but that's because I wasn't at school on Thursday and they didn't have it on Thursday. So that's the only thing I can think of that I didn't really do.
Yeah, same. I didn't go to adoration or go to Thursday morning mass like we did at school.
Some of us, if you woke up in time.
Whoops. Yeah, so there were some late nights in there.
Yeah.
Last 2 weeks of school.
Yeah.
But something that I have started doing is I started reading a little bit more. So recently I started reading a book, Real Mercy. So that might be a future topic. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Nice.
Louisa.
Well, okay, so I kind of don't really remember a lot of what happened this last week because I was so busy, but I had to completely move out of my apartment. And so, unlike my lovely friends here, I am now, leaving our college campus. And so, I had a lot of, unpacking and stuff to do. And in all that busyness, I just didn't really... I don't know. There was a lot that I didn't do. However, I did start reading The Activated Disciple by Jeff Cavins. Oh my goodness. Such a good book. In the middle of it right now. Highly recommend.
Since I've been home, I haven't done anything faith related. I didn't go to mass on Thursday like we normally do, or adoration solely because it's not right there like it is on campus. But I definitely look forward to working more on my faith life once I'm on break, to start reading things and just becoming well versed in everything.
Oh wow. Yeah, I've been on break for a week, and I went to mass Sunday, of course, back home. But other than that, there's definitely the convenience of having things on campus and having people around you that are wanting to go to daily mass. I think that's why I feel like this week has been a month already, because I don't have y'all to kind of push me to...
I definitely agree with that. That makes a big change to the way that you are within your faith life. At least that's how I feel personally. If you have that somebody next to you that's let's go do this, you're sure.
I feel like we talk about this every time.
Probably.
Yeah.
Community and accountability.
Yeah. And I think also, a lot of times, at least for me, and probably for you guys, but I'm not going to assume that, I will say that, oh, yeah, over break, I'm going to do this, this, and this. I'm going to read more. I'm going to go to adoration more. I'm going to pray more. I'm going to do all these things more. But I don't implement a plan as to how. And I don't implement a plan as far as how I'm going to hold myself accountable to doing that. And so I get all these lofty goals. I remember, I think it was last summer, I told a friend that I was going to learn more church Latin because I wanted to understand the language of Holy Mother Church. And did I do it? No. The short answer is no, I didn't. But the long answer is that I kept saying that I was going to, but I never really made a plan as to how and who's going to check in on me, how I was going to explore the information and where I was going to learn it and all that kind of stuff. And so then the entire summer happened and I didn't do what I said I was going to do. And so to turn this back around on you guys, what are you going to do over this break to not do what I did with the whole church Latin summer thing? How are you going to plan for that? How are you going to account for that?
I think one thing that we discussed yesterday when we were planning for the podcast was if we find an article or a video that we like and share it with everybody, that's a good thing. But then yet if somebody's not doing that, I feel like it's right for any one of us to call each other of us out to say, haven't seen anything from you in a while. Like,
what have you been doing?
Yeah, have you been reading anything? Are you just waiting for other people to send it to you? Or what? But I think that would be something that would be fun to implement because, you know, we all like to razz each other in our friend group quite frequently.
What are you talking about?
Why not razz each other into sainthood? That sounds like a good plan.
Nice.
It's a plan.
Yeah. I mean, that's like low-key what some of the saints did. I don't remember exact names, but you could probably pretty easily look this up. There were saints that used to be like, humiliate me in front of everybody, and they would just have people like...
one of these books here.
I know. We are currently sitting surrounded by a lot of my brother's books, and anybody who knows my brother knows that he has a lot of books. Like, I feel like we're sitting in a library, and this is maybe 20% of the books he actually owns.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
cool. Speaking of books, I think all of you have heard that I want to read a lot over break.
You set lofty goals, my
Yeah,
friend.
that's a lot of goals. That's an interesting thing too. Maybe setting realistic goals, but
Not saying they're
Sparkles,
unrealistic.
yeah.
they're.
They're just,
I might be
they're
saying
lofty.
Maybe.
yeah, but I think actually sitting down and reading, but in order to kind of force myself to do that and get into a routine, sitting with people and like talking about what I'm reading about and having conversations just about things I'm going over. Because a lot of what I want to read is pretty thought-provoking. And I kind of sit there and read, and then I just sit there by myself. I'm like, oh, wow, that was really interesting.
Makes
Ryan's
you think
crying
about
because
it.
he thinks it's so good.
Why are you crying?
I was yawning, and yawning brings tears to my eyes sometimes.
You look like you've been crying for like an hour. Why?
Maybe I will leave.
Don't leave.
Okay, so thought-provoking stuff. Do you feel like, and this is something that I definitely have felt before, that if you read something that's super thought-provoking or something very interesting or helpful or whatever, do you feel like it's hard to find people who are willing to talk about that with you?
Yes.
I mean, like, obviously we're really lucky because we all have
Mhm.
each other, but I think
At home.
prior to this, I didn't really have people that I could be like, oh my gosh, here's what I just listened to, here's what I read. What does this mean for my life? I think that's something that a lot of young people run into.
I agree with that. Because like we've talked about it before. Like I wouldn't be at where I am in my faith life if like we didn't sit down, Louise, and like have that conversation and things like that. So I definitely think finding somebody definitely changes in having that ability to sit down and have those per se tough conversations, whether it's thought-provoking or just hard topics that you don't necessarily understand or agree upon.
I think for myself, I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by people in middle school and high school that wanted to talk about that. Now, I was not the one who was asking or reading these thought-provoking things. So where the struggle came in was just the understanding. And so like you could tell me all about what you read or what you were thinking about, but I didn't understand any of it. So like the whole dialogue kind of aspect is more, if anything, it was just you explaining what you read and not much dialogue on the topic.
I think, especially during like breaks from school where we're not all together and we don't have like, you know, the convenience of being on campus together and just walking across campus and sitting down and having those conversations, I think we have to really implement technology
Yeah.
and actually like text and reach out. And I don't know, sometimes it's kind of awkward to like send that text and be like, hey, I have something that I really want to talk about.
Yeah.
Like, call me. And then they're like, oh, what's up? And then you're like, oh, I read this thing in this book and it's just changing my perspective. And they're like, oh,
Yay.
that's cool.
I'm gonna go take a nap.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, you have fun with that. Take a nap.
And that's with you having solid friends. Like, we
Yeah.
obviously have been lucky enough to have a college Catholic campus ministry. But I can think of a number of schools off the top of my head that don't have, you know, some sort of a Catholic organization, a Newman Center, Focus Missionary, you know, whatever, any of the big programs. And so I think if we're running into this issue and we have a campus ministry, how much greater that discrepancy or that issue is on campuses where they don't have kind of like ready-made Catholic friends. You know what I mean?
Deal with that over break,
right?
Versus like doing that for a whole year at school. That's like, whoa.
And then even beyond that, trying to find people that are willing and knowledgeable enough to hang at the same level of conversation as you is really, really tough. And that's on any end of the spectrum. You know, if you're a super beginner to theology, it's hard to find people that don't talk above your level. And then if you're like super advanced, it's hard to find people in kind of the young adult age range that are able to hang with that kind of a conversation and have educated points about it. So I think, you know, that's just a huge issue in the young adult age group is like, how do you talk about some of this stuff? How do you hold each other accountable? How do you have those plans?
It's also good, though, to have that overlap between levels, though, because then it reinforces what somebody's learned and it helps them explain stuff to people who need to learn that knowledge.
Yeah, I agree.
You need both.
Right. And so when I think about like what we're doing over break, I would be really, you know, kind of sad if we didn't talk about some of those remedies to, okay, obviously we know you need people to hold you accountable. We know that you need resources to help move you along and that you need to look into these things and whatever. But like I'm talking, let's go super specific. How do you do that? How do you send the first text? How do you find the book? How do you go on YouTube and find a high quality video? Like, how do you do those things?
I think an easy thing to do right now is everybody go around and say, what's a video that you like to follow, or who's an author you like to follow? And
Any sort of media or anything.
Good job, Jason. Ooh.
Who wants to go first?
I think you can kick us off.
Father Mike Schmitz.
Oh, I mean, how did I know? How did I know that you were gonna pick that?
Just go with mainstream Catholic society.
So why is that your go-to?
It just is. I really haven't found any other ones to go and listen to. And like the way that he discusses it, he's very conversational based, even though it's just himself. So that's one thing I like about it. Like he can start off at funny or whatever. He just takes the conversation a way that I don't think many other people do, in my opinion. So that is one of the main reasons why I like him.
Solid. Going off of that, because they're from the same organization, I highly recommend going on to Ascension Presents and going and signing up for their weekly Catholic Roundup. So what they do is every single week, I think it's on Saturdays when they send it, or maybe it's Fridays, I don't know. At the end of the week, they send an email that has every podcast that Ascension put out over the course of the week, every blog post that they wrote, every YouTube video, and then it's all in one email. And so you can go through and say, oh, that topic looks like something I want to learn more about, or that's something I don't know too much about. Like they did a whole thing on the antiphons, like root of Jesse, you know, all that stuff. And I was like, I didn't know any of it. And so I was going through the email. I'm like, ooh, look at me learning all this stuff. So like highly recommend the weekly Catholic Roundup from Ascension Presents.
Oh, I'm next. Catholic stuff you should know. That's my go-to. That is my go-to right now. It's a great.
Podcast.
It is a podcast. It is.
He wasn't
awesome.
Just saying Catholic stuff you should know.
I mean, yes. Thank you guys. It is fantastic.
Well, that is good as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is. So it's 4 priests, and they just kind of sit and have very laid-back conversation about pretty important topics, some controversial topics, just kind of everything in between. Very conversational. Jason was talking about Father Mike Schmitz. It's, I don't know. I just love listening to it. It comes out. They have one every week. I forget which day it comes out on, but I listen to it, and I usually listen to the that week's podcast at least once, but usually twice, because I like to go back and listen to it over again and try and catch anything that I didn't catch. So shout out to Catholic Stuff You Should Know. It's awesome.
Yeah. No. I listened to a few of their podcasts, and I really enjoy it as well. but who I've fallen to read recently is Father. I'm gonna say this wrong because it's French.
You want help?
Yeah,
Jacques Philippe.
what she said. Largely, largely because he spoke at my family's parish, and so we got a bunch of books from him. So I've been reading those, and one of them was Real Mercy. So that's the one I just finished. Highly recommend.
Good stuff.
I enjoy listening to they're a lesser known podcast. They're called The Sons of Thunder. I know one of the guys who talks on there. He worked at the camp I worked at. But no, they have really great conversations. It's just a bunch of old college guys, and they're hanging out, and they have conversations that you want to listen to. It's like, it's a conversation that you want to be a part of, and you really feel a part of it. And they talk about relevant topics like manhood. So for our lady listeners, it might not be the most relatable.
There's other podcasts out there for you ladies.
It's not gender exclusive.
Yeah. If you're looking for femininity, that's probably not your podcast, but they do have good stuff.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
Popped into my head.
What?
The one that he listens to.
Catholic feminism.
Oh my gosh, I know
what is it? The Catholic feminist.
Catholic feminist.
Dude, relax.
Have you ever listened to it, Jason?
No, but it just popped in my head just randomly. It's like...
She sent me the link to one, so I listened to it. I could not relate at all.
And you're like, nope.
Yeah, I didn't try to listen to any other ones.
For those of you who don't think that there are differences between men and women, you're wrong.
Very wrong. Jason, are you good?
I try and collect myself. Maybe.
Gotta keep it together. Get it together, man. Okay.
Just don't look at anybody.
What is your deal?
Okay, so moving on to more resources that I know of, because I know a lot of us listed like podcasts. I definitely think that the Catholic Answers live videos on YouTube,
Yes,
those are super good. If you have questions about like kind of oddly specific faith topics,
They've probably answered
they
it. They have so many.
I
They've
just
probably
watched
Catholic
one.
answered it.
I just watched one the other day where they were talking about if human clones have souls.
Yes.
And I was like, I had never even thought to ask that question, but like that
Was Jimmy Aiken
makes sense.
on?
He's the beard.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, he tackles
the
the
beard.
weirdest
He's
the weirdest topics. And he has an answer for it all the time.
I know.
So what was the answer? Because I'm very curious.
They are like, the clone is essentially just like a twin. So though the means of which that individual came into existence are immoral, much like a child from rape, a child from IVF, etc. Even though the way that they came into the world was not okay, their genetic makeup essentially just makes them identical twins. And so they are still a human being with, all the things that a human being has, and thus they have rational souls.
That's wild.
Gotcha. Which was the caveat that he put in there, because somebody was like, I know animals don't have souls, and he's like, animals do have souls, but they aren't
different.
rational souls. Because the soul is just the animating force in a body that like makes it does stuff.
Does stuff.
Makes it does stuff.
Sound like me talking
Make it
over
be
there.
like how it do.
So they're all very smart. They have several degrees in philosophy.
They started a school of apologetics too.
Oh yeah.
Bruh, I want to go.
So if you want answers to your questions with a Catholic perspective, highly suggest. Very knowledgeable.
It was super helpful when I decided that, not even when I decided that I wanted to convert, but like when I was just trying to get a better grip on the Catholic Church. I was listening to that
You
daily.
listen to them all the time.
Like the entire summer when I was working, I was able to have headphones in, and they were 8.5-hour work days, and the entire time I would have like episodes going back 3 or 4 years just backlogged, and I would listen to them one after the other, and I would just like have to stop doing what I was doing and just sit there and like listen.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, Jimmy Aiken, tell me what's right.
Tell me what's...
So-
Similar to that, though, there's also Relevant Radio, which covers
Yeah.
a lot of the same things. And there's a few different segments with that.
Yeah.
So give it a listen.
Okay, so that's how you learn more about your faith.
Before you move on, how do you have any more
Jason has thought.
any more like things to read? Because I know a lot of us
That's
said
true.
videos or podcasts or things to listen to.
I have one for women, but somebody else give an idea. Well, I make sure I have the title right.
Yeah, I gotta...
If you
Take it away, Jack.
I don't know, if your mind's on the topic of, you know, how like a lot of teens are, how it's like all sex centered, I think Jason Everett has an excellent book called If You Really Loved Me. It answers 100 practical
Yes.
questions that you encounter like on a daily basis if you're
Yes.
talking about your faith. Like, oh, isn't sex awesome? Why would we not have it
all the time.
all the time? Yeah. And so it answers really practical questions in a practical way. I annotated the absolute Matthew 22:27 out of it. I actually have it right here. It's very well worn, and there's
Wow,
dirt
you
all
really
over
have
it, and
Did you
loved
take that to
that.
camp?
I did take it to camp,
That
so
makes
that's
more
why
sense.
it's very dirty. I'm
'Cause
not.
that cover used to be white.
I was about to say that was a white cover.
That's
on
a
that
white
book.
cover. Yeah, you can see it on the corner.
Ooh.
It's white there. And
We're
it's-
definitely gonna post a picture of this.
All right.
Yeah. Stay tuned if you want to see a picture of Jack's book.
Jack's really
If-
dirty book.
if
Not in content,
Yeah.
but
It's
the-
actually quite beautiful and pure in content.
Yes.
I'm
but-
like baffled. That used to be white.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it looks like it was made like that.
It's like a
It's
slightly
gross.
old parchment.
That's disgusting.
It looks like ancient parchment paper.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I think we should
It's like
stop
the
talking about how the
Declaration
book
of
looks because
Alright.
the flaw of the podcast is that they cannot see what we're looking at.
We will post a picture of your
So
book.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
One
okay.
last thing. I also wanted to, I'm going to Seek, and he's at Seek, and hopefully he'll be able to sign this copy.
Real
Jason
quick.
Everett, if you're listening, please sign my copy.
Real quick, what is Seek?
Oh, Seek is a young adult conference in Indianapolis, and there's going to be a lot of famous
Well, this
Catholic-
year it's in Indianapolis.
Oh, yeah.
So
And,
By
you
the
said
time this
he's
is
gonna-
released, Seek might be over.
oh,
Yeah, but it happens every year. It's in a different location. It's a great way to beat the young adult winter break blues.
Catholic stuff you should know will be there.
mhm.
Hey.
Indeed.
Pretty
So-
much, probably everybody that we talked about will be there.
Ooh, Dr. Scott Powell's going to be a speaker there, so you guys get to meet him.
Yeah.
He's an amazing guy. Okay.
I
All
thought,
right.
I thought you were gonna say my second author, Dr. Scott Hahn.
Yeah.
He is such a good author. Whew, love his books.
Yeah. Very intense,
Yeah.
but highly recommend.
So, okay, I have a book for all of you beautiful young women out there. And I suppose men could read this too, but I feel like it probably wouldn't touch on the same needs quite as much. It's by Sister Miriam James Heidland. She's awesome.
Isn't she
And-
gonna be at Seek too?
She's going to be at Seek
Yep.
as well. And
I'm gonna have to edit this one
yeah.
sooner and get it out so we can,
Yeah. And the book is called Loved as I Am, An Invitation to Conversion, Healing, and Freedom Through Jesus. This book, anybody who knows anything about Sister Miriam knows that she had a very broken past, because she talks about it in a lot of her keynotes and things like that. And it talks about kind of her journey to understanding how much Christ loved her, even in the midst of all the brokenness, and she used that love to promote healing. And the way that she goes about it isn't so much a biography about like how she found that love, but she uses her personal experience to guide you through finding how much God loves you. And it really transforms a lot of the issues that women have, not just like, oh, am I beautiful or not, right? That's like every women's talk ever. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of women that struggle with whether or not they're beautiful or do guys like me or whatever. But it also covers things like being a control freak. It covers things like being super judgmental or super angry. And it just like completely transformed the way that I saw myself through like God's eyes and how I saw my relationship with God. Highly, 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 highly recommend. I read it in a day because I couldn't put it down. I mean, to be fair, it's only like 100 pages.
Still, that'd take me like 2 weeks to read.
2 weeks.
I have the attention span of a squirrel.
Yeah, the attention pan.
That's a very small can.
Not the squirrel that was on the deck this morning.
We saw the fattest squirrel. Anyway,
It
okay.
was huge.
Matthew, your book?
So one of the I'm very like convert oriented and mindful today.
Yeah, you're the convert.
Oh, thank you
Also,
for your
Dr. Scott Hahn converted as well.
Yeah,
so.
his conversion
We
story,
love converts.
super cool. Anyway, where are you going? What was I saying? Oh, right. One of the first books I read was Why We're Catholic by Trent Horn. And I've actually had a lot of Catholic friends ask me what I've read so far. And I've recommended that book because it's very straightforward. For me, as a convert, it was very easy to pick up and read and learn about the church's stances on certain things and why we do what we do. And I've had a lot of Catholic friends talk to me about that book, and I've recommended it to them because it is more convert directed, but I do think that it can serve as a very good reminder and kind of a refresher for anybody. As like, if you're just going through the motions, you find yourself going through the motions, reading something like that can really put it back into perspective. Oh, this is why we're doing this. This is why this is so serious. This is why it's important. So I definitely recommend that book. Again, very straightforward. You can pick it up. You can read it in a couple days, honestly. It's not very long. But yeah, that's my big push.
Okay, I know you have books, right? Or were you not going to talk about them?
I was not going to mention a specific book, no.
Oh, okay. So I wanna make sure, because we've addressed a lot of like knowledge-based things. I also want to address the idea of like, and I learned this from the book The Activated Disciple, the concept of, are you just trying to know as much as you can about Jesus, or are you actually developing a relationship with Christ and with the three persons of the Trinity? Do you look at God like this ambiguous thing, or do you look at God as a triune God of three persons that you have to have relationships with and foster those relationships? And so one of the ways to kind of beat the winter break blues or whatever blues in life you're experiencing right now is to go back to that relationship. And one of the episodes a while ago, I brought up the idea that if you treated your significant others or your friends or your family members the way that you treat any of the persons of God, what would that relationship look like? Odds are probably not great. And so you want to make sure that you look at your relationship with God, all the persons of God, and really start to foster those relationships. So what are some ways that you're developing that relationship outside of just learning more?
That's a
Yeah.
hard, thoughtful question.
Ooh, okay. Follow me here. Try
Following.
and stick with me. Because this, it's not that
Is
loaded.
this
I'll just
Twitter?
go for it.
Because I'm following you.
I deleted my Twitter. Anyway, so I've been very self-reflective for a while now, and I've come to the conclusion, I mean, I knew this for a long time, but really like how broken I am and how to essentially fix that brokenness, I can't do anything myself, and it rests in fostering that relationship with Christ and being dependent on Christ through that relationship. And that can look like a lot of different things. It looks like something, it looks different day to day, honestly, what I'm doing to help that relationship grow and develop. So it's really hard to just say, oh, I'm doing this one thing. But I think understanding the extent of our own brokenness and knowing that the only way that we can do anything about it is turning to Christ. So that's kind of where I'm at. That got a lot heavier than I thought.
No, I mean,
It was good.
yeah, crucial.
Well put.
Oh,
Crucial
thank you.
details.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ryan.
All right, well, since you're passing the mic, I think it comes to applying what you learned. And so an example of this, and I think Matthew sort of touched on it a little bit earlier, which makes it a little bit easier, is if you read or listen to stuff twice, once for the mind and once for the soul or heart, as it's been put before. That way you can internalize it then. And so, in the book I just finished, Real Mercy by Father Jock, he says...
we're working
Philippe.
on it.
Jacques Philippe.
I was going on a first name basis here.
Oh, okay. Wow, I didn't know you guys had a relationship, but never mind.
I haven't even met him, but I got a signed book by him.
Me too.
Whoa.
Hey.
Where'd you get that book?
Oh, from you. You handed it to me.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, he talks about how you have to be willing to do one of two things, and that's either face God's mercy or his justice. And so the one way I took that is by facing his mercy in confession and being forgiven. You put yourself in a position to potentially go to heaven, if depending on how you live the rest of your life, then on, and continuing to go to receive God's mercy. And if you don't, who knows what happens? But I do not want to be one to face God's justice if it be poor for my outcome.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Okay.
For me, the three most important things are silence, prayer, and the Eucharist.
So you're going to say Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Father,
and I was like,
Son,
hey!
Well, I mean, that is true. But like in terms of developing that relationship with Christ, the only way you're going to do that through prayer. And personally, the only way you can really pray is through being in silence, both like mentally and kind of around you. You're in a reverent environment or an environment where there's nothing distracting you. And then the Eucharist is also important because we are in unity with the entire church and with Jesus Christ. So those are the three most important aspects of my life in developing my relationship with Christ.
Oh my God. It just sounds like a Com 110 speech. I'm going to talk about three things. 1, 2, 3. These are my three things. This is what I talked about today.
Come on, it wasn't that simple.
It wasn't that simple. It was very well put, but that's like the first thing that came into my head when you're like,
You are full of giggles.
I am. I don't know what it
What is
is.
the deal?
Alright, what is your suggestion, or what are you doing?
Well, I'm just starting to learn how to do that, or do this, by trying to live intentionally with my life, as well as, like, applying the things that I learn and solely believing in the things that I learn, because there has been a lot of things within the Catholic faith that I haven't necessarily believed, that I was always like, no, that's wrong, but now that where I am in my faith life and learning these things, I'm starting to come around more and be like, well, that's not actually how I feel. I actually align more with the Catholic faith. So just learning how to apply those things is like crazy. But yeah, does anybody else have any more ways that they're living in this manner?
I have one that we haven't touched upon because it's kind of a given, but not a given for everybody.
Yeah.
So like during break, I'm kind of bringing it back full circle here. But during break, it is crucial to go to mass because you don't have those same people around you to be like, hey, we need to go. When are you going? Are you going Saturday night? Are you going Sunday morning? What are you doing? When are you going? Where are you going? You have to, you need to go. You have to go. But there's ways kind of around that inconvenience of not being around others that usually drive you to go. If you live close enough that you can kind of road trip on Sundays to go to mass with somebody, like that can be a thing. I know I have a friend who may be doing that 2 weeks during break, possibly. But I don't know. I don't know if anybody has anything to add in terms of going to mass. That is a huge thing, and I just want to make sure that we touched upon
an
that.
accountability aspect that you could add to that too is talk to your friends about what was said during the homily, especially if you don't live close to everybody like me in the middle of nowhere. It's fine.
And I think making sure that when you're at Mass, prior to Mass, after Mass, preparing for Mass, like all these things, when you're relating to the Mass, you should really try to make an effort to actually interact with God and to say, I know that the Mass is this gift given to God the Father. The gift is God the Son, Jesus, through the power of God the Holy Spirit. So to say, I want to participate in giving you this gift, and like, how can I be the best when giving this gift to you? How can I interact with you? And you can take that mentality into your daily life as well. One of my favorite questions lately is asking God, what do you want to do today? And it sounds so simple, but it's what do you want? What do you want to do today? Do you want me to do something? Do you want you to do something and me to kind of sit back and watch it happen? Do you want us to both be doing this thing together? What do you want? What do you want to do today? And I think that simple question can completely change your week if you let it.
Anybody else have anything on their mind?
I think it'd be fun for us to like compile a list of questions per se like that we could post on our social media to start that conversation with people that don't necessarily have that conversation with God, just so they know where to step into it and go, this is how I can talk to him. Because I feel like a lot of people are in that point where they're like, how do I do this? So I think that's something that we could potentially discuss later on.
Definitely, that's something we could look into doing. Yeah.
Yeah, as a side note, for our friendly listeners who don't already know this, we do indeed have a Facebook page where you are free to send us messages, emails, like, comment, share, etc. The Facebook page is Unlikely Disciples Podcast, and that's where you can find the links to where you can listen to everything as well. So we can certainly have some conversations out there for all of you and on the various topics that we talk about. And that's also where you can stay tuned for Jack's book.
See a picture.
a picture of my book. That's right. So yeah, just shoot us a message if you have any questions or any topics that you would like to hear discussed on our podcast.
So real quick, just to wrap up. So we've been talking about kind of how to navigate when you're on break, away from school, away from all those people, away from your, fellow believers. And I think, a couple things that we just hit on pretty heavily were kind of accountability with others. So having those conversations with others and, checking in with people, just being very cognizant of what other people are doing and how they're working to grow their relationship with Christ. And we also talked about going to Mass. You need to go to Mass. That's kind of enough right there to say about Mass. You need to go to Mass. Mm-hmm. And then something that took up a big bulk of our time here was talking about resources that we utilize. Those can become your best friends, kind of. I know that as much as I listen to certain podcasts and whatnot, like I feel like I have sort of a personal relationship with them. But yeah.
My last thought on the resources is we mentioned a lot. There's still a lot more out there. If you're looking for something specific, you definitely feel free to reach out to us, but also priests, deacons, spiritual directors, youth ministers, they have a lot of good resources and more experience with helping people find those as well. Yeah.
Priests go to school for a long time. A long time.
They know a thing or two about a thing or two, so to say the least.
All right. Well, this is the end of our little journey today. And so if you liked this, please feel free to share it wherever you want to share things, and give us a like on Facebook and all those lovely other platforms. We encourage you to check out our other episodes if you haven't listened to them yet. And as my lovely Saint Padre Pio would say, pray, hope, and don't worry. God bless, and have a great break.
Bye. I'll miss you.
Your button.